Good evening, friends. Welcome once again. Thank you for joining. And the reading from Living Wisely, Living Well for this day, today is, for 29th August, is seek approval only from people whose opinions you respect. The applause of multitudes is like bubbles in a champagne glass, rising, then bursting at the surface. Better the scolding of the wise than the adulation of fools. Popularity is the surest sign of individual inadequacy. A very beautiful, you might say, quote or a suggestion by Swami Kiranandaji, especially in our times where, for example, the first thought which comes is, let's say people go on social media. And it has, when it came, it has certainly played that role of connecting people, making knowledge, inspiration accessible. I sometimes tell people, it's so easy to travel the world now just by seeing some of these things online. But then, we try to, let's say people do something, and then there's the button like or dislike. And that's also in itself, it's not a problem, except that, of course, yogically, we know we want to get over likes and dislikes. But people can get, as we all know, addicted to that and affected by it to the point where others' opinions matter a lot to us. Now, that is where it starts getting problematic, because we should know, we should have that kind of confidence of who we are, what are we doing, where are we headed. It is good to get approval. Kiranandaji puts that in the very beginning. Actually, on the other hand, imagine somebody who does not want any approval, or they may be continuing to do something and later discover that, oh, I wish I had sought some suggestion or guidelines. So we need these two. We need somebody's opinion, but not for the sake of popularity. And Kiranandaji saying the way to seek it is approach somebody who you respect. It could be a teacher, it could be a friend you confide in, it could be anybody in that field. Recently, I remember just last week, I wrote to a very senior manager in the company of where we do workshops. And we were getting very good feedback, continue to get. So as I was preparing for this meeting, I asked the consultants with whom we were working so far, I said, I'm going to meet this senior manager of yours. Could you please write a testimonial on how I and my team have done so far in the last 2 years? And I would like to show him the slides of what we do and just get more opinion, get understanding and guideline from them. And now that kind you want to do because you want to serve them better. You want to know what is the company about, how can, what have we done so far, how are we following, let's say, latest trends which are helping people find solutions, and be open to criticism also. Another time I remember I asked one of our senior acharyas in Pune after a talk, and I said, what do you think about it? And he reminds me, he said, now remember, you are asking for feedback. I would not have given it myself, but remember you asked for it. I said, oh yes, tell me what you think. And pat came the feedback and constructive, of course, but those are the kind of things, you know that yes, you may be doing well, but you want it to come from a higher source. Master used to say, Swamiji used to say, always ask, what would Master do? Would he approve of this? How would he think? How would he feel? And on one level, friends, I was trying to, when I was preparing for this talk, I thought of the caste system. And I think this is a universal phenomena. We all grow through the gradations, and Swamiji is telling us how to avoid a pitfall over there. Because think of the caste system. Now, I remember the time when I was, and you can fit in your own example, because as I said, we move in that direction and we all would have experienced this. You're doing something good. Maybe you helped somebody, maybe you contributed money to them. In my case, it was, I was a keen surgeon in training, and one day when I had done cesarean sections, 3 of them, it was quite a reason to celebrate. People actually do celebrate when they learn a new major surgery and you have to actually treat your whole team. And I came back to my room to rest and then in the evening prepare for this small treat to everybody. But I was asking myself, I said, now it's a good thing I did. I performed the surgery well. The parents were naturally happy. Babies were born and all. My team was happy. I ought to be happy. But in my own heart, this was just a week before I came to Ananda, I said, I am not really exuberant or too happy about it. That in my mind, I was thinking that, what more? How can we, you might say on the scale, spiritual scale, it was like I was starting to touch this consciousness of Brahmin consciousness, that okay, we can give money to somebody. People may be saying your skills are good, your nature is good, you have given us perhaps a discount. But for your own sake, it is always good to say, is there something more? And that is actually how we improve. Now, Kriyanandaji puts in the word scolding over there. And that's some word. Actually, if we see in our line of masters, I think the one who received quite a bit of scoldings, I think, was Master himself. His guru was Sri Yukteswarji, as we know. And Master said his father was strict. His brother, older brother Ananta, was stricter. He said, but Sri Yukteswarji was nothing but drastic in his demands on the students, and for that reason he had very few. Now there was a time when Master Yoganandaji was still called Mukunda. He was a little boy, young man, I would say, young adult, and he was serving in his guru's ashram for a while, and some students came up to him and they said, we have decided to leave this ashram and Sri Yukteswarji, we want you to join us and you can be our guru and we will all follow you. I think you all know the story, but if you don't, Master immediately told them, you go if you have to. I am not leaving my master. And later he would tell many devotees, including Kriyanandaji, he said actually many of Sri Yukteswarji's scoldings were uncalled for on one level, but there was a deeper reason. I'll explain that. He said, for example, once he asked Master to bring him a glass of water. And this was, I think, a very big gathering. Hundreds of people were sitting there. And as Master brought this water, his foot caught in the edge of a carpet and he somewhat tripped on it, but he didn't fall. And he gathered himself and he immediately put the water in front of Sri Yukteswarji. But Sri Yukteswarji, seeing that incident, he immediately remarked, he said, look at this clumsy oaf. And everybody burst into laughter. And it was as if they were just waiting for something to happen. Maybe Sri Yukteswarji was about to start talking, but then this happened before that. And all people were laughing. And Master, in his mind, he of course didn't feel bad about what Sri Yukteswarji said, but I think he was hurt by the uproar of laughter that came from his Guru Bhais. And he inwardly said, none of you have what I have, but what I have accomplished. But he said, he just happily accepted it. Why was Sri Yukteswarji so hard towards him? Sometimes our parents could give us scoldings. It's good once in a while to get it from our good friends, seniors. I remember Swamiji in his book Sadhu Beware says, if somebody is scolding you even for something you have not done, if it doesn't make much of a difference, allow them to continue or get it off their chest, because it will be a nice way for us to surrender the ego. You see, the ego is what seeks approval. We should seek God, or we should seek God's approval, Guru's approval. But what I'm talking about is general likes and dislikes, praise, name and fame. Those are the kind of things the ego thrives on. And when those are taken, it becomes very hard for it to live. And in this case, Swamiji said, I think Master was scolded so much, trained so hard by Sri Yukteswarji, because he knew that this wonderful favorite disciple of his will have to go to the West and there face a lot of hostility. One of the common things, I mean, today it would be unthinkable for anybody to say such things, but about a century ago, people told Master, the Western body is not meant for yoga and meditation. Please stop teaching these things over here. Can you imagine such hostility in such an intelligent crowd? Of course, there were many other more extreme examples, but Swami says, that Master's heart was strengthened by Sri Yukteswarji, so he was not seeking or not affected by people's opinions. Praise and blame, comfort and the withdrawal of it, people's suggestions, opinions. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna more than once reminds us to gently, consider withdrawing from those things, should not be affected. Ultimately, Master says you should be so sure in yourself, so calm in yourself. Your feelings should be so balanced that you're not seeking those things, you're acting. When you're calm, actually, when we are calm, we are acting from soul guidance. And does God make it hard? Of course. Another story I'm just remembering is that of Saint Bernadette. That if you remember, she was from France, Lourdes, and now there is a wonderful fountain from where this holy water springs to this day. But back in her time, there was nothing. It was actually a garbage dumping site, and Divine Mother Virgin Mary had appeared over there to Saint Bernadette. And as Saint Bernadette was, being guided, nobody else could see her. And people were quite doubtful that such a thing was happening because the girl was very young and such. At one point, Divine Mother would say something and it would not come true immediately. It would take some time. And at one point, she said, okay, now, and she was not talking in clear instruction ways. She said, eat the grass, dig the soil, eat the grass, dig the soil, and with your face. And in front of hundreds of people, after all these speculation and her own parents and everybody was there, here Saint Bernadette, just like a child, started doing that. And her mother thought, and people started laughing, and her mother said, this is it. So far I supported you, but this insanity, you're eating grass and your mouth is totally, mud smeared. What are you doing? Get up and let's go. And everybody had a great laugh and they were leaving back for the village when the springs started coming. So on one level, God, gurus, sometimes in order to perhaps break that habit inside of us, they will make sure that we are left alone. What to speak of having a popular, following, as Swami is saying, seeking that is certainly a sign that we are lacking inside something and we are seeking so much outward approval. But how does this work, friends? As I said, when we evolve, it is natural for somebody who is not at that level to praise us. So for example, somebody is a Shudra, a very lazy person, and he sees a Vaishya doing every day, getting up, doing his work, perhaps tending to, this attitude of doing something for people, getting something in return, giving them something for that. And they may say, wow, how do you manage this day after day? And the Vaishya can be very happy. Oh, yes, of course I am inspired. I do this. Look at you. You are always in the bed and never able to help yourself. And it's good for this conversation to happen because the Shudra perhaps in time will come out of his laziness and help himself, start serving others. But then if you compare the Vaishya to a Kshatriya is a person whose happiness depends on serving others without any expectation of return. Now, it's always good for people to give something in return because it completes the circle, whatever it is, money or appreciation or service, just how the service has been rendered. But ultimately, a Kshatriya is one whose happiness depends, even if need be, to give up their life for others' sake, for the country's sake, for the sake of dharma and such, and security of others sometimes. You wonder, is he praised for that? Yes, it's good to get praised and people move in that direction, but ultimately they don't do it for praise. Often these acts are done somewhere up in the mountains or hills, forests, in wars situation, or sometimes very silently. Well, think of Mahatma Gandhi. He lost his life in the process, but he knew it. Master said he had a premonition. Of course, there were so many threats around that, but his happiness depended. It was not for popularity. It was not for name or fame. It was to simply fulfill one's dharma to get that happiness. But many people, for example, would perhaps praise such an act, which it deserves to be. But if you see it from the next higher point of the Brahmin consciousness, their saints of many different cultures, religions, worldwide have said it's wonderful They actually see God's reflection in everything, because that's why they're able to stay so calm and acceptable, because they see, yes, everything is happening in God's time, in their own way, but they never forget to remind us that the highest goal is to realize who we are, find our oneness with God, and to that effect, even the sacrifice of our life should be made above all by God's will towards Him, not for, just about, you might say, anybody. We should ultimately be moving in that direction. And when we can do that, then we realize, oh yes, this is like Swamiji is saying over here. I'll read that line, that I am seek approval from people whose opinions you respect. It is not about other things. Now, it's very good if we have that clarity of what we must be doing. For whom are we doing? Perhaps it is for Guru. I think it becomes very specific and focused. But Master also said that if, let's say, you are in a situation where you don't have that kind of company, perhaps you're at a distance, you're alone, no one knows you as well, or your aspirations are not supported by their opinions, how do you confirm what you're doing is the right thing? Where do you take an approval from? He says, in your meditation, focus at the point between the two eyebrows and project what you are trying to do, a decision you're trying to make. Perhaps there's a lot of misunderstanding. I remember that, it was Kriyanandaji finally, after many ups and downs, when I came on the spiritual path, who finally supported, oh yes, you should start a rural clinic. It will be very good for others. It will be very good for you. And you could do this. And I said, my goodness, he is so appreciative of these steps and not saying you should be finishing your degree, which I was appreciative of, but I wanted to focus on preventive health, and that was my real concern. But in the general scheme of things, people's opinions can go very, actually diametrically opposite, but he was able to support that. So we have that question and we project it from the spiritual eye, and then we wait for the response and we try to feel. And in our heart, then we can say, oh yes, this is feeling right. Like I said in the beginning, this is what Master would do. Sometimes I do this exercise. If I'm not getting mental clarity, I take a paper and I said, okay, what would Swamiji do? I saw him, I have some understanding of that, how it was feeling, how he would take his decisions, what he would approve of, what would be the motive perhaps behind, let's say, doing an exercise, an outreach program, or any kind of event. And you say, he would have liked this, this, this. And when we do that kind of focused thinking, it could be very far. Of course, anytime you do a big program, there are people who will benefit, there are things that will happen well. It will help with the spread of the name of the teachings and the Master. But what are Masters really seeking? Is it helping me in the process? Is it helping my team in the process? And, popularity, actually, let's accept it. In time, Master will get more and more popular. So that is one thing which we cannot avoid. In the process, as outreach happens. But that, like Swami said, he didn't want to be popular. He said it came as a byproduct. He said, I don't know. People tell me I'm popular. I don't think anything of it. Similarly, Master's teachings may get known, but what you and I are doing in that direction, or apply it in your own profession, how is it helping us? Are we getting more sure of that decision? Are we feeling more enough freedom? Are we not affected by people's opinions? Because Swami used to often repeat, I remember towards the end of his life, he says, people are often wrong. Most people are often wrong. So if we are of that kind, especially, I know Master's disciples are very strong-willed, and that's a very good quality. But if we are affected by others' opinions, and we base our daily decisions on that, then we are in a very, tricky situation, because we could be wrong. And often as it happens, years pass by, you turn around and you say, wait a minute, how did I land up over here? Just because everybody, or as they call society, just because society was saying it's the right thing to do, you kept moving and you forgot to ask the real questions. So I would say, let's find somebody around us. Let's find the Master's presence inside of us and ask them those questions and get their approval for our future progress. Thank you for joining this evening, friends. And you can go back to the book Living Wisely, Living Well to visit that quote and see how you can apply it in your own lives. I'll be doing that exercise for sure myself today.